only 3 weeks until the NFL actual draft takes place on April the 23rd in Pittsburgh. For those of us who have followed the draft for a long time, we love doing mock drafts throughout the entire offseason. It feels like the light is approaching at the end of the tunnel. We're now through all of the pro days. We're now through the combine. We're now to the point that teams are going to start figuring out who is it they're actually going to want to bring in as their next franchise players to fill the voids on their roster. My name is Simon Erickson. I've been doing a lot of mock drafts here recently in the offseason, but today is a really important today because we've got the man, the myth, the legend. Dalton Wasserman is going to be joining us, longtime PFF analyst, high school coach for football. A lot of people do analytics on the players out there, and they might go the first or second layer deep. I'll tell you, Dalton goes to the fifth or sixth level of understanding teams and schemes and how this is all going to shake out. Dalton, man, I know I speak on behalf of anybody who's watching this when I say thank you so much for joining me and doing a mock draft here this morning. I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely, Simon. I appreciate you having me on. And it's always a fun exercise, right? Just to see who can get the most perfect mock draft and try to predict the unpredictable, right? But to me, just going through the process of trying to match up these players with the right team fits and what teams need. And at the end of the day, despite all the analytics and everything else that goes into the noise of draft season, it's all about winning football games, right? And winning championships. And the teams that draft the best, that's exactly what they do.
100%. Now, we're going to be running through a first-round mock draft, all 32 picks for the first round here. We're going to do this predictive style, not necessarily what me or Dalton personally might be doing, but what we think these teams are going to be doing when they're coming up on the clock. I'm going to take the odds, the odd picks, and Dalton's going to take the even picks. And we're not necessarily going to follow the consensus. I think it always is more fun when we go out there and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do, whether or not you see that in other mocks out there. I think it makes it a little bit more fun when you go against the herd sometimes. Dalton, my friend, are you ready to kick off the mock draft for 2026 here?
Always ready. Plus, you're giving me the both of my New York Jets picks, so this will be fun.
Yep, absolutely. I might have lost you for a second there, but I heard the Jets at number 2, and I know you're going to have the Saints at number 8, so I'm excited about both of those. So here we go. Here it starts. The official 2026 mock draft with Dalton Wasserman is now live. I'm going to pull up the simulator so we can see what we're doing. We're going to do a screen share of that so you can follow along with our picks. Again, you can always follow a lot of Dalton's coverage. He's been doing this for a long time, and I've always enjoyed it. I would highly recommend following along with what he predicts because he's generally right when it comes to these mock drafts. But number 1 on the clock, first and foremost, the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not going to belabor this pick because I think we're all in consensus that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback that's coming out of Indiana. Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, going to be number 1. Going to be really exciting to see what Clint Kubiak can do with this player in the new scheme that he's building. Dalton, without belaboring this pick, because I think we're probably in agreement, at least from most that I've seen, that Fernando is going to be the number 1 pick. The Raiders have been active during the offseason, right? They brought in Tyler Linderbaum, the center, to be helping him out under center. You brought in a lot of defensive talent too, right? You brought in Kwity Paye. You brought in a lot of linebackers. You brought in Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker. You brought in Taron Johnson from the Bills. A lot of defensive talent out there. The Raiders are coming back on the clock again at 36 at the top of the first round. What we're talking about, so that we just don't completely jump over this pick, but what do you think they're going to prioritize as they're back on the clock again there at the top of the second for this team that's got a lot of rebuilding going on right now?
I think you mentioned it. They've got a lot of rebuilding going on, so they have the luxury at that spot of taking their best player available on their board, right? They need a lot of help at wide receiver. I still think they could use a number 1 type of receiver. Defensive tackle would be very much a priority for me. I think off the edge, especially with Max Crosby now staying in Vegas, I think off the edge they're pretty good, but at defensive tackle they definitely could use some help. And I think there's going to be a lot of good players at that position in that range. And then I look in the secondary also. I think just trying to fill in more holes on defense and then at wide receiver to give Mendoza one more weapon, possibly even one of his teammates from Indiana, maybe an Omar Cooper or an Elijah Surratt with that pick. So definitely on the perimeter, they could get better on both sides of the ball, but there's a reason this team is picking number 1 overall. They got a lot of holes to fill. I think they should stick to their board, go with best player available in their opinion.
Love it very much. We're going to lock in Fernando for the number 1 pick. There's the start in the draft. There he is, number 1 to the Raiders. This is where the draft is really going to start, Dalton. This is why I want to give you the evens. I made the easy pick. You got the hard one now. You're on the clock now, my friend, with the Jets at number 2.
So if we're going predictive, at least early in this draft, and I think the predictability of this draft drops off a lot after the first maybe 8 or 10 picks. I think there should be several guys in consideration for this pick, right? You talk about, yes, the talent of Arvell Reese and the potential dual threat that he gives you as a linebacker or as an edge player. Ruben Bain, who was just so dominant, not just this year, but all 3 of his seasons at Miami. David Bailey was arguably the best pass rusher in the country over the last 2 years. And then maybe there's a dark horse. Maybe they want another receiver this high. Maybe it's a Caleb Downs that they say, you know what, positional value be damned. It could be a safety. He could be one of the best safeties in football. But for the sake of predictability, and the betting lines have shown this a lot lately, we'll go with Arvell Reese here. I would highly consider Ruben Bain or David Bailey as well. I think it's much more of an even battle than people think. But right now, the favorite is Reese. And I think it depends on your opinion of Reese and how they're going to use him. Now, if you're only going to use Arvell Reese as just an edge rusher, I think you're taking a gamble there. I do, over the more established edge rushers like Bain or Bailey, right? But I also think something that's not being said about Reese enough is there is top 5 linebacker in the NFL potential with him and his teammate Sonny Styles, who we're probably going to draft here very, very early in this mock. I think the hybrid role, almost like the way that the Eagles used Jihad Campbell last year, where he played, I think it was 150 snaps down on the defensive line, that could be a good role for him. But it just depends on what you think of this player, how you project him, and then if you're going to use him full-time off the edge, can he really be of that level off the edge, of a Micah Parsons, of an Aiden Hutchinson, of guys that get drafted in the top 15 off the edge? You expect, especially as pass rushers, they're going to be elite players. So I'm going to go with Reese here. Trust Aaron Glenn as the defensive-minded head coach who's now calling plays to kind of figure out how and when and where he fits in, but certainly super talented at such a young age.
It's going to be interesting, the evaluation that Aaron Glenn has on those players at the top, right? I almost feel like it was kind of embarrassing for him this last season. I got a defensive-minded head coach, had a terrible record throughout the season, didn't get a single interception all year, but now you know that he knows what he's doing. I mean, he was the defensive back for the Jets and stuff for your Jets. It's going to be really interesting to see how he could deploy Arvell Reese. I think if anybody could do it, it's probably Aaron Glenn that would do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a big reason he's taken over the play calling, and they've really signed a lot of free agents. They made a lot of acquisitions to make that defense just a more credible unit this season.
I'm up with number 3 with the Cardinals. This is one that, Dalton, I don't know if you've been seeing it in mocks, but I see a lot of people saying that Francis Mauigoa is going to go here at the right tackle because it's the greatest need for the Cardinals. I don't think so. I just don't see it, my friend. It's just like I see that's the most glaring hole in this roster. You've got to have a right tackle out there. The Cardinals are going to want to run the ball. Jacoby Brissett's going to be quarterback. You want to protect him. I understand all of the rationale for that. But if you're picking number 3 at the very top of the draft, I think you're burning a pick on a right tackle there. I think you're going to address that later in the first round if you want to trade back up, or even in the second round. I think there's going to be value available for that position. My strategy on this one is just go after the best player that's available right there, and it's going to make the most immediate impact on your team. If you guys can believe this, the Cardinals finished last season with 24 players on injured reserve. I mean, it was basically a direct line from the field to the ER, because so many players were just getting banged up, and it was tough for the Cardinals to actually fill these positions. We know that they've drafted defensive line talent in previous drafts. Walter Nolan comes in last year. Darius Robinson the year before that, who in 2 years as an edge rusher has only gotten 2 sacks on the quarterback. You've got to do something about that defensive front. I think the Cardinals at this point at the number 3 pick are going to go with David Bailey, the edge out of Texas Tech. Great finisher. We know that he was very productive throughout his college career. I think that he's going to immediately bring juice to this team. Maybe not the perfect scheme fit. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this pick, Dalton. They tend to run more of a 4-3. I think of him more of as a 3-4 outside linebacker, but I do think he would be an immediate contributor for defense that needs a lot of help right now.
Yeah, he's an incredible pass rusher. I think right now you could argue easily that he's the best pure pass rusher in the draft, right? Maybe some concerns about his run defense. And look, this past year at Texas Tech, he got better in run defense. He's more of a penetrator and playmaker type of player in the backfield, right? I don't necessarily trust him between the tackles, but to play out wide, keep contained, and make plays in space, that's really going to be Bailey's specialty in run defense. And talk about a Cardinals team that off the edge, very quietly, they've got some issues when it comes to the long term. Josh Sweat has requested a trade. Zaven Collins Jones and Baron Browning both entering the final year of their contracts. So they're going to have to reset at this position at some point. They've dedicated a lot of resources, including their first-round pick, Walter Nolan, last year to the interior. But I think either pick at edge defender or even at linebacker, if you would have chosen Sonny Styles here, I get it. This is one of the most barren linebacker groups in the league. If you went that direction or if Reese was on the board, I would understand it as well. But I think Bailey, anything to make their front seven better, because it's been a problem for several years now, I think makes a lot of sense. I think Bailey's a logical pick.
100%. We're going to lock in Bailey at number 3. That puts you back in the clock with the Titans at number 4.
So for this pick a lot, I've said this on probably the last 5 mock drafts I've done, but I'm going to say it again. The 2 guys that I gravitate towards with Tennessee are David Bailey, who you've already selected there, 3rd overall, and Jeremiah Love. I think those are the 2 guys. I think Robert Saleh would just love the pure pass rush ability of Bailey, but then Brian Daboll on the other side as the offensive coordinator, he's going to want to run the football, right? He's had the most success as a play caller, whether it be with Buffalo or with the Giants in the past, where he can run the football. He's got those star backs. He's got the run game that can really balance out his football team. And Jeremiah Love is far and away the best running back in this class. He's far and away the most explosive back in this class. I mean, talk about a guy who ran the same 40-yard dash as Jahmyr Gibbs at 15 to 20 pounds heavier, right? 210 pounds, run the way he can run it. And I always just go back to, I was at the playoff game a couple of years ago when they were playing Indiana. Max and I were there, and he ripped off that 98-yarder against a top 5 defense in the country, and it didn't look normal. I mean, it was just ridiculous how easily he just glides down the field and creates these home run shots, right? I think he is in that category, at least, of the great running back prospects we've seen the last half decade. Ashton Ginty last year, Saquon Barkley, B. John Robinson. I think he's at least, if he's not better than those guys, he's at least in the category. I'll go with Jeremiah Love here to Tennessee, really jumpstart that run game and figure out some balance for Cam Ward in that offense.
The Titans tend to like that run game. There was a guy named Derrick Henry that put up a couple yards for him in years past. I'm going to lock you in for Love, but I'm going to tempt you with the Sonny Styles idea. Did Sonny Styles come to your mind on this, knowing that Saleh, knowing Fred Warner, knowing that he likes to blitz and use linebackers like that? Is that a potential consideration, you think, for them at number 4?
I think you could certainly consider it with Styles' potential. I think something to remember is that even in San Francisco with Warner, with Dre Greenlaw, and even say with the Jets with a guy like Jamie and Sherwood, who he developed into a pretty good player, that he's, at least maybe not him, but the organizations he's been with, they've been tempted more so to go with linebacker a little deeper into the draft and develop those guys and find athletic players they can really fine tune. And I feel pretty comfortable, at least with the linebacker duo that they have in Cedric Gray, who really emerged as a great run defender last year, and Cody Barton, the veteran. So I think linebacker is something they can address, certainly for depth, but they don't have to do it with the 4th overall pick unless they just absolutely are blown away with an Arvell Reese if he's there, or a Sonny Styles.
Love it. Playmaker of the draft, Jeremiah Love, number 4 to the Titans. That brings me to the Giants at number 5. Talking about New York, I know you're an upstate New Yorker, Dalton. Let's go a little bit south. Let's go to New York. What are they going to do on this one? I mean, John Harbaugh, I think that probably the 2 players that are staring him in the face right now that are most commonly mocked to this is Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles, right? 2 Ohio State defensive players. We know that Harbaugh likes a good, high football IQ player, a physical player. I think both of those guys are staring him right in the face. And I think those are probably the 2 most common that I've seen in the consensus thus far. But I'm not going to pick either of them. I'm going to go out of the consensus on this one. I'm going to go with Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU for the Giants here. And again, this is a little bit veering out of consensus, but I see it playing out. First of all, Harbaugh brings his defensive backs coach with him. Don DeLisio is coming with him to the Giants from the Ravens. Always good when you're bringing a Ravens defensive backs coach like that, who in previous years has dedicated resources to early round picks for the secondary, right? Kyle Hamilton, we know about that one. Nate Wiggins, the years after that. Malachi Starks this last year. We want to see Harbaugh continue what he's done with the Ravens, with the Giants, and that starts with rebuilding the secondary. Of course, Caleb Downs would do that, but I think that Harbaugh really wants to have a lockdown cornerback 1 right now because he's in a pass-happy division, right? If you're playing against the Cowboys and the Commanders and the Eagles and these teams want to air it out on you, you've got to have a lockdown cornerback 1 to stop those and jam up those wide receivers. And I know that the Giants were in the mix for Trent McDuffie, who ultimately got traded to the Rams. The Giants wanted him. They made an offer for him. We're not able to offer as much as Los Angeles was, which is why he goes out to the West Coast rather than the East. But it still leaves kind of that void that I think Harbaugh is wanting to lock in, a lockdown cornerback 1 for his defensive secondary. And I think if I'm thinking about a lockdown cornerback in this draft, it's Mansour Delane for me all the way. I'm going to lock him at number 5 to the Giants.
I agree. I have him as the top corner in the draft. It's a pick I haven't seen a ton, but I think is entirely possible if they believe in the potential of Delane. He had such an outstanding final year at LSU, right? I mean, up and down a bit at Virginia Tech, but the way he fit in there and the way that he just locked everybody up all season, that's secondary was really the best part, I should say, of LSU. Of their football team, and only allow 14 catches in an entire college season is just ridiculous, right? So man-to-man, you mentioned it, lockdown. I think the zone footwork has gotten better. The 4.3 speed, when he ran that at his pro day, and then you go back and confirm that shows he just does not get beat vertically. You're not going to run right by him. So I think it really is an underrated factor in the Giants' process here. They've got Paulson Adebo starting on one spot on the outside, but lost Cordell Flott. He went over there with Brian Daboll to Tennessee. Deontay Banks hasn't worked out. So it's something I could definitely see them considering. Maybe it's a little bit of a surprise considering you have Styles and Downs on the board, but the value of great cornerbacks is so high that I think it makes sense.
We're going to see. Number 6 is going to be an interesting one too. This is going to be a controversial pick for a lot of people. You're on the clock again with the Browns, number 6.
Yeah, this is a tough one because to me, offensive tackle and wide receiver are just such high priorities for this Cleveland Browns team. And it depends with picks 6 and 24. And then even the maneuverability they have with 2 first-round picks to trade up or down if they want to. It's about which one do you take first. Now, the one interesting thing with the offensive tackle class is you don't have a ton of proven left tackles. Monroe Freeling at Georgia had one great year. Caden Proctor isn't quite considered a player that might go 6 overall, barring any sort of surprise. And we never know. We could get to draft night. It could be Caden Proctor. And then, some of the top guys like Mawanoa, right tackle, Spencer Fano, right tackle, Blake Miller, right tackles. I've been leaning towards going wide receiver first here for Cleveland and then waiting to see what my options are either at 24 or eventually, if they want to trade up a few spots to get a guy that they like, then so be it. I'm going to do that. I think the top 3 wide receivers are all extremely close in talent level. Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, all extremely different types of players with similar levels of talent. But it sure feels like Carnell Tate is going to be the first one drafted. He's the vertical threat. He's the tallest of those 3 guys. Could still put on a little bit more weight, but he's smooth at his size. I like what a lot of the scouts have brought up as a loose comp to a George Pickens type of receiver. I think that makes a lot of sense. And the Browns, they need, to be honest with you, I could say that Todd Monken's going to need a certain type of this or that in his offense. They just need talent. Right? They just need talent. They have a hard time scoring points, and their offensive line and their wide receiving core was not good at all last year. They've already rebuilt some of the lines. So I'm going to go with Carnell Tate. I'm going to wait and see what my offensive tackle options are at that 24th pick for them.
I love it. I would agree that Tate is going to fit right in there at home or right there in Ohio. My question for you is Monken selecting Tate to be the target for Shedeur or Deshaun Watson or another to-be-determined quarterback? Who's taking the snaps under center for the Browns as their franchise quarterback?
I do think it's somebody currently on the roster. I would be surprised because, they're going to obviously take a look at a guy, say like Ty Simpson, just to see, what's in there. And if they really feel like he's their guy, they might take the shot. But I think the favorite right now, has been a lot of rumors about this. The favorite right now is probably Shedeur, at least to start week 1, right? Showed some flashes last year, also showed some of the flaws, holding on to the football too long and taking some chances under pressure. But, again, behind the worst offensive line in football, I get it. He's going out there trying to make plays. He had to work through that at Colorado. We saw some of that at Colorado too when their offensive line wasn't great. So I think it's going to be Shedeur. It's going to be a competition. Todd Monken's going to go in there with a fresh mind and a fresh set of eyes and really evaluate what he has. But I think it's going to be Shedeur week 1. But I do think it is going to be 100% somebody within that building already.
Yeah, interesting the drama that happened with him last year in the draft, but kind of seeing him get on his feet again, get back in the saddle and taking the snaps. I think he's got some good poise. I'd love to see what he does next year with them as well. Okay, that brings me back to the Commanders at number 7. I think that Dalton, I think it has to stop here. I think that you can't get Sonny Styles past the Commanders without him being picked by Washington. We're surprised that he's even available at 7. I think Carnell Tate would have been a good fit here too. But I just like the sideline. This guy's a physical freak. The commander of the Commanders defense. It's going to be right there making plays. These guys are on geriatric care right now, man. It's like, we got 80-year-old players out there on the Commanders defense running slow, need to have some youth in this team. I think Sonny Styles is a guy that's going to bring a lot of heat in a lot of different formations, can do a lot of different things. So it seems like somebody that Dan Quinn is going to love. I can't let him fall past 7. I got to go with Sonny Styles here with number 7, the Commanders.
I get it. I think it fits right in. You talk about Styles and his athleticism. They signed Leo Chenal, who I absolutely love. I thought it was one of the best free agent signings in the entire offseason. You still have Frankie Louvu, who's kind of that hybrid player, linebacker and edge, depending on how you want to mess with the fronts. And Styles is just such a talented player here. I mean, it's hard to see him getting by 7. Certainly, if he got down there to number 10 to Cincinnati, I wouldn't let him get by there. Absolutely not. I mean, I think him and Reese both, there's a reason that Ohio State defense gave up 8 points a game or whatever it was this past season. They had two linebackers who have top 5 NFL linebacker potential in them, right? It would not shock me one day if you see lists 3 years from now that go, oh, these are 2 of the top 5 linebackers in the league. Styles, former safety, can really run. The range is just outstanding. That's the word that keeps coming back to me is rangy, between the speed and the length, the places he can get to on a football field. As a linebacker, not many others can do it. So I think he would add a ton to the middle of that Commanders defense and a lot of athleticism that they need in coverage in particular.
I will say, as a bit of a disclaimer on my pick there, that if Carnell Tate is still available, if he didn't get picked by your Browns there at number 6, I think it's going to be really tempting for the Commanders, who have got their new offensive coordinator, David Blau, former quarterback, kind of brought in to develop Jaden Daniels. It's going to be really tempting to give him the number 1 wide receiver of this draft. If Tate's still on the board there at 7, I think that's the other pick that they're going to debate at who they can pick it at when they're on the clock again.
Oh, absolutely. It showed last year, especially when Terry McLaurin was hurt, that they were short on receiving options and they need another vertical threat like that. If Tate's on the board at 7, I think it's going to be under heavy consideration because regardless of anything else going on that team, you got to build it around Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has proven he is good enough to take you a long, long way into the postseason. You keep surrounding him with weapons, especially a vertical weapons, as good a vertical passer as he is. I think he could take it even further, right? So I think that's the entire idea is just build this environment for Jaden Daniels to succeed in.
Absolutely. Now, Dalton, this next pick, I am selfishly the most interested in the entire mock draft. I have been a diehard New Orleans Saints fan since I was 7 years old growing up in New Orleans. I have supported my Saints the entire time. It hurts me that we are picking this high in the draft, but at number 8, I wanted to give you this pick because I am really interested to see what you're going to think that my Saints are going to go with this pick.
I've been going receiver a lot here in this kind of scenario. I think Mansour Delane if he was on the board would be a possibility. I so often let Caleb Downs drop to number 10 too to Cincinnati, or even 9 to Kansas City. You could certainly take him with the next pick. I wouldn't blame you. And I wonder if he would fit in. If he would fit in New Orleans too. I wonder if I change this up because there is a good amount of receiver depth that they could attack later. I've been going receiver a lot. If I was going receiver right here, I'd probably go Mekhi Lemon. I just love him. I know he's a little undersized, but he's tougher than you expect him to be. He makes contested catches. He makes people miss with the ball in his hands. Do I want to change it up and make my life I could make life really hard for myself with the 10th pick there. I sure could.
Tell me about the Delane. Tell me about Lemon at the comic. Can you expand a little bit more on that one? You saw him, I think, right?
I mean, just kind of that loose wide receiver, LA-ish personality. I think very relaxed, and I think look. I mean, I don't think it's anything wrong with his character or anything like that. I think you're just talking about a guy who knows he's good at football and he's got a lot of swagger, right? So I think wide receivers, especially, we certainly have a long history of wide receivers sometimes being a little bit different. So that doesn't concern me at all because when you watch him on tape, guy's an animal. He's an absolute. He didn't win the Biletnikoff Award for nothing, and I mean, he's got some stiff competition there with guys like Jeremiah Smith. But am I going need or am I? God, I love Caleb Downs. I'm gonna go with Caleb Downs. I'm gonna mix it up. I've been going receiver so often for this team, and I'll probably continue to do so for the next 3 weeks. Give me Caleb Downs, I think, to fit in with Justin Reed, with Jonas Sanker, and Downs. You know what it is? The number of different roles he can play in. If you want him in the slot, if you want him back free in different situations, and you just talk about this team losing Alontae Taylor as the nickel as well, Downs can play any role that you want him to. I think highly enough that he could be in consideration for a top 5 pick, right? And I think when you talk about a guy that can just play any role and be a leader in a defense and just kind of be this force multiplier who makes everybody around him better, it gets harder and harder for me to pass him up. I wouldn't let him get by 10. If somehow he got by 10, I wouldn't let him get by 12 to Dallas. I mean, I just think he's one of the few guys in this draft who all 32 teams would love to have. I'll take him to New Orleans to mix it up.
Man, I love that. I would love to have Caleb Downs on my favorite team. I got to see him in the secondary. New Orleans always prioritizes secondary. Kellen Moore has always said he wants to take the best player that's available. He's not going in with the mind that he has to have a certain player at 8, and it's hard to argue that Caleb Downs is not the best player there at number 8. Pretty pumped up on the pick, man. And for me, it was between Downs, who I expect to be available, Ruben Bain, who would be just a wrecking ball of that defensive line out there. And then you mentioned I'm torn on Mekhi Lemon. I think he's exactly the kind of receiver that the Saints want to move the chains. Tyler Shuck wants to throw it 10, 12 yards, just kind of move, you pick up the first downs. But is it too early for him? Maybe it is. I cannot fault Caleb Downs there. It's a perfect pick for the Saints. Okay, that brings me to number 9. Now I'm on the clock again with the Chiefs. This is another one that could go a bunch of different directions. I kind of see not a consensus on this one. I know that there's kind of a favorite on this one, but I think I'm gonna veer from the consensus of what I think a lot of people think I'm gonna do on this one. I'm gonna go with CeCe Maui-Noa. I'm gonna go with the right tackle here with the Chiefs. We know they picked up Josh Simmons last year at left tackle, had some injury concerns. I think he's going to be back in the fold. And you've got Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks probably in NFL history, coming off of nasty knee tear, ACL tear. You got to protect this guy. You just lost Jawan Taylor, the most penalized offensive lineman, I believe, in the entire league. Seems like he was getting a false start penalty every single play that he was out there. But, he's out now. You brought in, a little bit of relief, Jalen Moore, to kind of be the starting right tackle. But I don't know how well that's going to last. And I think that just with Maui-Noa, the first lineman that we're taking off the board, the first offensive lineman off the board, if the Chiefs get that opportunity to plug in somebody on the other side, make sure that Mahomes is locked down covered, I think that's probably the number one priority right now. You've got, again, a 2-year deal with Jalen Moore out there, right tackle. You just waived Jawan Taylor to save $20 million of cap space. If you could put a rookie deal on there with somebody who's a lockdown right tackle, everything that I've seen with Maui-Noa, he is just an immobile, marble chess piece that's just going to stay right there and be tough to move out of the way. I think that's kind of what the Chiefs want to do. Even as tempting as Ruben Bain is going to be there for their defensive line, I'm going to go with CeCe Maui-Noa, number 9, going to the Chiefs. What do you think on that one, Dalton? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I've watched a lot of Miami Hurricanes football the last couple of years, and both are fantastic players. They'd both be great choices, right? Maui-Noa is something that stuck out to me, and I have him as the best offensive lineman overall in this draft. Something that stuck out to me watching his tape. So on our show, on the PFF NFL show every week for our preview show, we would get Trevor would talk to former Saints great left tackle Teron Armstead. And one thing that Teron would always say is the first thing that he tries to make sure he can handle from an opposing defensive end is power, the bull rush. Can I stand up to his power and anchor and then work off of that? I think Maui-Noa does that as well as any player in this draft, maybe the best of any player in this draft. He's just so strong. He's so stable in his base that you are not going through him. You better find a way around him. You better find a way to get creative with stunts and things of that nature because you're not going through him. He's so strong. I think Kellen Moore is going to love the idea of him not Kellen Moore. Andy Reid I was thinking of the pick before. Right. Andy Reid is going to just love the fact that he can just get downhill and be a mauler in the run game, especially considering they just signed Kenneth Walker to that big deal. They need to get more explosive in the run game, but your offensive line's got to get better too. So I think if you have a healthy tackle duo of Josh Simmons and Francis Maui-Noa, you're really starting to be in business there with a young offensive tackle duo that you mentioned. It can protect Patrick Mahomes and blow open holes in the run game. I think Maui-Noa would be a really good pick for Kansas City.
Absolutely. Coming back to you again here, Dalton. Number 10 to the Bengals. Unfortunately, you gave Caleb Downs to my Saints. Who are you going to go with here at the 10th pick?
For me, the Bengals pick here in general has been best player available. Could they surprise us maybe with a third option at receiver, which I've always thought was missing in their offense? Sure. If for any reason, and he won't, Jeremiah Love got to 10, I would really think about it. But I'm going to take the top guy on your board there in Ruben Bain Jr. I think he's well-deserving of a top 10 pick. I know the short arms. I understand the outlier. But this guy wasn't just a one-year wonder dominating this past year in Miami. For all 3 years of his college career, he was just outstanding. I actually have him as the top edge player in this draft on my board. And the difference between him and David Bailey. Pass rushers, you could debate Bailey. If you want to debate him a little better, fine. Ruben Bain, when you break down the tape and how they used him at Miami, he was a cheat code in the run defense, right? When you talk about getting in bigger fronts and playing him a little bit inside the tackle or over the tackle, right? And the ability that he has, and his lower body is just so darn strong, and he knows what he's doing out there. Bain and his teammate Akeem Mesidor, two of the most well-coached players in the country, right? Jason Taylor, the former Dolphins legend, is their defensive line coach down there. He did such a great job putting every bit of polish on these guys that he could, right? You talk about knowledgeable pass rushers, strong run defenders, guys that hold the edge, guys that can move inside and play in different techniques. I love Ruben Bain, man. And I know the traits, the Bengals usually draft more so on traits. You saw it last year with Shamar Stewart, another edge defender. But losing Trey Hendrickson, they still have a need all across the defensive line. I think Bain would be a great pick for him at 10. He would really change the scope of their pass rush, especially.
They got to keep swinging, right? Until you get the right edge rusher out there that's actually going to do some damage for you. I understand the rationale on it. My question for you, Dalton, is how big of a deal is this short arms thing? I feel like that's all that anybody wants to talk about with Ruben Bain anymore. Do teams really care, or does that just mean that he's off the board for certain teams and not other teams? Or, how much of an impact is this actually going to have when we get to draft day?
I think they care to an extent because it's always, the tough part and why there's so many draft scouts in the community now is to study how guys' game will translate to the NFL, right? Because you can dominate physically in a way in college that you can't do consistently in the NFL unless your name is Myles Garrett and he's the freak of all freaks, right? So I think with Bain, is it maybe a little bit of a concern if you're unsure? But, as with any of some of those outlier guys, there's a few of them in this draft I absolutely love. You still have to watch the tape and you go. And one thing I always like to say, I don't want to say sarcastically, but he's been playing with those arms his whole life. Right. So, I mean, you talk about a guy who understands how to overcome it. If it was just overcoming it because he's faster or he's just stronger than everybody across from him, sure. But again, I go back to the part where he's so well taught and he understands how to use his leverage, how to use what length that he has to attack the right spot on the offensive lineman's chest or to one shoulder or to use his lower body as the base of his attack. So I really think he's a guy who's, again, well deserving of a top 10 pick. Yes, it's a bit of an outlier. Yes, maybe there's a lot of the community that if he busts in the NFL, they're going to go, see, this is why we don't do this. But, we heard this a lot with Will Campbell last year, 4th overall pick, and the Patriots made the Super Bowl with him as a at least solid left tackle. I'm confident that Bain can overcome it. I know, again, you wouldn't say that with every guy. You wouldn't say that with maybe a 5th-round pick, but this guy's special, man. He's been a special talent for 3 years at Miami, and he's so well coached. I think he can overcome it.
I think he's going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, man. I think he's going to be completely amazing when he gets to the pro level. And I think everyone is discounting him right now because of the short arms, because of all the narratives we're hearing. But like the outliers are the ones that, that do it differently. It's like disruptive innovation in the investing world. If you're doing something differently, you got an offensive lineman that's taught to block a certain way or expect a certain rush from an edge rusher. This is breaking the mold of what is expected and consistent. I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do, man. Even short arms or not. I mean, like you say, he's been doing it his whole life. You can't argue that he's one of the best edge rushers in college football last year. And you can put him on the Bengals. Finally, Cincinnati would be cheering. Finally, we get an edge rusher that's very productive for him. Pretty excited to see Bain there at number 10. Okay, I'm back on the clock again with the Dolphins. Dolphins, my gosh. Man, we could pick anything here, Dalton, man. I could pick any player on the board, and you could plug him in right there to that roster. Another rebuilding team. I think that when you're rebuilding in your team like this, to me, I'm going offensive line. The offensive line for the Dolphins last year was bottom 3 in the league last year. They had terrible pass production the entire year, especially from their guards, right? And you got Malik Willis coming in right now. You want to make sure you're giving your new quarterback a chance. I think that you want to fix your most glaring issue with probably the best guard on the board right there, which is Vega Ioane. Got it done. This is a Samoan dude from rural Washington that just, is very hard to get around. Great footwork. I mean, really, really strong player. I think that he's going to fit right in there and fix one of the most important things that the Dolphins have to fix first and foremost. They got a lot of skill position needs too. Obviously, Tyreek's out there. They're trading out the wide receivers. They got defensive problems. Maybe you want to put a cornerback, somebody like a Jermon McCoy is a popular pick here. But for me, if I'm the Dolphins, I'm doing the safe thing first, and then I'm going to go on the fringe second. I'm going with Vega Ioane there at number 11.
I get it. I mean, I think you could justify almost any sort of pick here for the Dolphins. The pass rush was not good. The pass protection was not good. The secondary's barren. The receiver room's barren. I mean, take your pick. And I think the Dolphins, it has to be looked at more so than just this first round of, they have 7 of the top 94 picks in this draft. If you're somebody who likes to keep an eye on teams at the very start of a rebuild and how you would build a football team, I think it's going to be a fun exercise to watch John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley put this team together in this this draft especially. I mean, they've got as much draft, I would say maybe the most draft capital in the league when you talk about 7 of the first 94. So looking at, I think the Dolphins, one thing to remember is just looking at the depth of this class, right? Receiver, there's a lot of depth, right? When you talk about, D-line, if they want to fix that, there's a lot of depth here, right? Taking a guy like Venga Ioane, who to me, I have him as the second best offensive lineman behind Francis Mauanoa, just super stable in there, right? He's an excellent pass protector. What is it? The last 2 years, I believe it's the last 2 years, he hasn't given up a sack or something close to that, right? And he's gotten a lot better as a run blocker. Probably a B to B plus athlete, not quite the athlete that maybe somebody like a Spencer Fano is, who's an A to A plus athlete, but the strength and stability that guy gives you inside. And you made a great call. Those guard spots were the real problem for Miami on the offensive line. Bringing Ioane in, I think, is really a nice long-term move to start building in the trenches.
And we traded Jalen Waddle, right? We picked up another pick in the first round. I'm going to go back and address the receiver, the cornerback at the end of the first. But like you said, the drop off from the guards, I think I want to have the elite guard to fix my most glaring issue there at number 11. Brings me back to you at number 12, Dalton. You're on the clock for the Cowboys.
So the Cowboys, for me, the entire focus of this offseason has to be their back seven, right, on defense. Talk about linebacker, safety, cornerback. They brought in Jalen Thompson at safety, which I think is a good move, but it's been kind of quiet for the most part on that front. They had to give a lot of money to George Pickens on the franchise tag, so they didn't have a ton to work with. I'm between two guys here. It's Dylan Thieneman and it's Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. Now, I love Thieneman. He's one of my favorite, if not maybe my favorite player in the draft, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who can absolutely fly. He showed off the athleticism at the combine, whether it be Purdue or at Oregon, two different systems, any role you want to put him in. He can absolutely just change your defense, I think, in a similar way that Caleb Downs can do that. Coming off, though, of, was it yesterday or day before, Jermod McCoy's pro day. And finally, we got to see him do something on the field. And he goes out there and he runs the 4.3 and he jumps over 40 inches and he looks fluid in the drills. And he showed you all the potential that he had in that 2024 season when he just dominated everybody at Tennessee, man. I mean, I have a feeling that might be enough to convince a team to take him this high. The Cowboys need a presence like that at corner out there, and they have some depth out there where they can wait if he's not quite ready still for any reason. But I think you look at talented players in that back seven. Maybe I could wait to see if Thieneman gets to me at 20. I guess I control half of those buttons. But I'm going to go with McCoy here. I think coming off the Tennessee Pro Day hype, I think you're going to get Jermod McCoy taken in the first half of this first round on the potential that he showed in 2024.
Man, I just love that you said Thieneman as the potential for the Cowboys, which I'm not seeing anywhere else. It just shows that, like you said, you go the fifth and sixth layer deep, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, you got a new defensive coordinator coming in, right? Christian Parker coming from the Vic Fangio defense of the Eagles. And the Eagles, more than anyone else, they have the versatility of those defensive backs. They can play multiple positions, right? You got guys out there that can, rotate wherever you need to be. And it seems like Thieneman is one of those guys that for the Cowboys can do whatever assignment he needs to be. He can be a free safety if you want him to be. You can line up on the line of scrimmage. You can rush the passer if you want him to. You got Jalen Thompson coming in as a strong safety. It feels like a good opportunity to have versatility in the backs. But McCoy, man, how can you argue with McCoy? I mean, I'm so glad to see that he's back at true form again. And there's always the injury risk potential, but there's also the potential that he's the best cornerback in this class. And you get him at 12, and that's the only reason you got him there was because of the injury. Cowboys need a lot of secondary help, 30 points a game last year. Seems like either one of those picks would be fantastic. I love McCoy there going to him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think linebacker will be a focus for them later on in this draft as well.
Dalton, I'm going to go to my favorite pick of the entire first round, I think, other than the Saints that I'm going to go with my favorite pick here, which is the Rams. The Rams are not supposed to be drafting this high. You have a Super Bowl roster that just has been gifted this pick, of course, by the Falcons with their terrible selection that they made. Not a terrible selection at the time, but unfortunately the aftermath that they picked working against them right now. The Rams get to pick the best player on the board that's going to have the most impactful season here in 2026. You have got Sean McVay. You've got Matthew Stafford. You've got a high-power offense that's ready to win the Super Bowl this year, and you don't know what's going to happen in 2027. You got to go all in this year. You can't go out and say, okay, we've got a project, we've got a development build, we're going to be good with this player 3-4 years out. You want somebody who's contributing right here to win your Super Bowl in 2026. So I think you know what I'm going to do because it's the ultimate high-risk, high-reward player that's still on the board there amazingly because nobody else wants to go there because of the injury risk. But I'm going with Jordan Tyson. I'm going with wide receiver out of Arizona State to the Rams. there at number 13. Why? This is my favorite pick because, again, Stafford, MVP of the league last year. You got him under center for one more year. You want to give him one more weapon. We know Puka just checked into rehab. He bit somebody at New Year's. That's a little bit odd. We don't know what's going to happen this summer. I assume he's going to be back at the beginning of the regular season. You've also got Devontae Adams. Imagine putting Jordan Tyson on top of that receiver crew with Matthew Stafford, the most creative artist at the quarterback position in the league right now. There is not a defensive secondary in the league that can cover those three receivers at the same time. And all of a sudden, the Rams go from being one of the most fun teams to watch in the entire league to the most fun team to watch on Sunday in the entire year. I think that Jordan Tyson is a clear wide receiver one. He's the alpha of this class. The only reason, in my opinion, that Carnell Tate goes before him is because of those injury risks. He brings it on every single play out there in the field. He plays larger than he is. Yes, you got the hamstring injury. Yes, you got the collarbone injury. Yes, you got the tear on the knee out there. But again, in the worst case scenario for the Rams, they draft him, he gets hurt early in the season, and you still got Puka, and you still got Devontae, and you still got Stafford with a high-octane offense. That's the worst case. In the best case, you have a wide receiver core that no defense in the league can cover. I am pumped up to see what would happen if Tyson goes at number 13 to the Rams.
Absolutely. Ever since they traded for Trent McDuffie and made all those moves in their secondary, I've been a huge fan of the Rams going receiver at 13 there. I mean, Tyson or Mekhi Lemon, I think they would both fit in there, right? Depending on who's on the board and what their evaluations are. But it's a great call on Tyson. He plays bigger than he is, and I think he's such a crafty route runner. I think he's the best intermediate route runner in this class, right? You just talk about the way that he sets up corners, the way that he gets in the blind spots, and the patience that he has to run those routes, right? I mean, it was kind of a thing where Arizona State had to figure out how to use him all across the formation, but Sean McVay can do the same thing, and he can find opportunities for this guy to get open. Tyson, if he stays healthy, is awesome, and certainly in the conversation as the best receiver in this class. You just got to keep him healthy, but I think McVay and all the ways that he uses different personnel in his offense, he can absolutely do that.
And I think Lemon is the safer pick. So Lemon's still on the board. You know, you could take him. He doesn't have the injury history. You could certainly go with Mekhi Lemon and justify that pick too. But I'm just so intrigued by what Tyson could be with the right quarterback and the right system out there. Back to you, my friend. You're on the clock again, number 14 with the Ravens now.
This is interesting because I've been going Venga Ioane so often with this pick. That's been my favorite pick for Baltimore, and he's off the board.
Sorry about that, Dalton. Yep.
Then so my mind goes to, do I go to an edge rusher like an Akeem Mesidor or a Keldrick Falk? Personally, I like Mesidor better by a good amount than Falk. I think he's got a very well-rounded game, and again, Jason Taylor taught him so well to rush the passer. Or do I go receiver? Do I get Lamar Jackson, another weapon? Or actually another idea that's been brought up to me, I forget who brought it up, was the Ravens being the team possibly to go in on Kenyon Sadiq. I know Todd Monken's not there anymore as their offensive coordinator, but there's such a long history of that team using tight ends and multiple tight ends to their advantage. Lamar Jackson having such success throwing to tight ends. And we have to remember, this is a team that lost both Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, who was a valuable part of this offense, to free agency. Mark Andrews, yes, they signed him to an extension, but he's getting a little bit older, slowing down a little bit. Man, this is where the predictive versus my part of this comes into this. Because me personally, I probably would not make Kenyon Sadiq a top 20 pick. I just don't see him as on that level with Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, Brock Bowers, those guys that go this high. But I think in this class, and yes, there's athletic ability. I think it could happen because there's just not that many great offensive playmakers. And if a team feels like he could be one, and a team with the right fit, with the right role, like Baltimore has with Likely and Kolar vacating, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with Kenyon Sadiq. I've been taking Ioane so often. I wouldn't hate Mekhi Lemon here, but I do wonder if there's a part there where he is kind of similar in-ish to Zay Flowers, similar in style to Zay Flowers. So do you want two of the same guy out there? Give me Sadiq. It's not a pick. If I was the GM, it sounds funny because if I was the GM of the Ravens, I probably wouldn't do it. But I think this is much more on the board than we think. And pairing him with Andrews would make some sense.
I love it. I love that we've broken from consensus on that based on what we think is going to happen. It seems like it's so common that you see Vega going to the Ravens. It's like we've gotten that burnt into our brains, and like just to see them opening up the field a little bit more. I like that pick. I can definitely see it happening. I've got a tough one here at number 15. Dalton, yeah. I do not like this. I just don't like this setup for the Bucs. You know, Tampa Bay's on the clock. Jason Light wants to trade this pick down. I think this is the ultimate trade down position. You know, he trades down in previous drafts. I don't think there's a player on the board right now that he has to say, I'm staying and I'm picking. I think this is probably the most likely trade up position. I think that I could see Howard Roseman and the Eagles trading up to get Fano, who's still on the board right there. You know that you want to have a right tackle as some kind of consistency. I don't think we specified if we're doing trades or not, so I'm going to take it off the table right now. But I just want to say I think there will be a trade if the board plays this way. Did you want to comment on it? It seemed like you were nodding your head on that one too.
Yeah, I think it's a very good call. This is the first pick, really, when we get to the Bucs at 15. Every time I do a mock where I go, man, what is it? You know, because I'm not going to get – I don't think I'm going to get one of the elite edge rushers like a Bain. Like if Ruben Bain ever fell to 15, sprint it in, Jason. Just do it, right? But I just don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is where we really get the cutoff of, okay, here's where the elite players in this draft are, and now you got to start picking from the rest. If you were forced to – I mean, you can make a trade if you want. We could mess around a little bit. If I was forced to make a pick here, I think I'd go Akeem Mesidor. But a trade down makes a lot of sense. And I'll tell you, the team and the thought that I had when it came to a trade is Cleveland. Like we talked about before, this is a scenario where I think if they wanted to give up some ammo to get Monroe Freeling, I think they would get a lot of praise for that, man. And I think they would plug in Freeling as their left tackle on day one. And then you come out of round one with Tate and Freeling, two impact players with a lot of the other veterans you brought in on the offensive line. You've gone out of your way to make the life of whoever your quarterback is easier. The Browns feel like a trade-up spot for me right here, if you were feeling so adventurous as to do it now.
So tell you what, you're on the phone right now. You're Andrew Berry, you're GM of the Browns. You give me a call at 24, and you say, what's it going to take Jason Light at number 15? I'm going to say to you, Dalton, and we didn't specify we're going to do this before this live stream that we're doing right now, but I'll tell you what, Cleveland, if you will give me number 24 and number 39, then I'll give you number 15 in this year's draft, and then throw in, maybe a third rounder for next year too, just to make it balance out in the value. We can adjust that later if we wanted to, but I do think that in the spirit of both of us thinking this is going to be a trade down, I think Cleveland wants to trade up exactly for the player that you just mentioned. And if I'm the Bucs, I'm willing to do that because I'm already set at left tackle. So what do you say? Will you give me number 24 and number 39 for number 15 here?
Oh, I'm looking at some charts right now. Could you, if I'm adding this in my head right, which I think I am, could you send back number 77?
And let's just say yes. So we'll just say they worked it out. They worked out the details or whatever the numbers.
We'll do that. We'll send back. So we swap down we go up from 24 to 15, and we swap down from 39 to 77.
There you go. Okay, so
I could vibe with that. Yeah, I'm in on that. And then I would say we go Monroe Freeling there for Cleveland.
You got it. Monroe Freeling, number 15 to Cleveland in a trade down. I believe that was 24, right, Dalton? I'm at 24 for for Tampa now. Okay, perfect. And now tell me about Monroe Freeland at Cleveland. I mean, you've got a banged up, DeJuan Jones, 380 pounds, banged up left tackle right now. He's going to be injured again, I think, this season, as well.
No, I think Freeling would just be their week one starter, especially if you're talking about trading up to get him. I think you're talking about a guy who's super athletic. He's got high upside. I've seen some, loose if he hits the ceiling, Colton Miller type comparisons that stand out left tackle for the Raiders. I mean, talk about a guy who got a lot better in pass protection this year. Still working on some technique in the run game for sure. But you talk about a guy with all the potential in the world and a high ceiling guy the Browns, certainly could take the chance on here. I think it makes a ton of sense. And if he really is their guy, I think the trade up makes a lot of sense also.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. So I'm going to keep you on the clock again. That was 15. That was the odds. But then to even this back out, you're back on the clock again for 16 now with the Jets.
16 here. I'm going to get my guy off the board. I think if one of the top three wide receivers is on the board, I'm going to take him here. The Jets are going best defensive player in the draft, in their opinion, at the number 2 pick. I really like the idea of adding another wide receiver. Give me Mekhi Lemon. I think to me, you walk out of here with a great defensive player and Mekhi Lemon or even Jordan Tyson at 16. You're really rolling, right? You've got Garrett Wilson, who's a star. You got A.D. Mitchell, who, can at least help you somewhat as a vertical threat if we have a functional quarterback, and hopefully we do in Geno Smith. And obviously building towards the future of the position as well. And I think Mekhi Lemon is that third guy. Him and Garrett really both being movable pieces in this offense. And Lemon, you know what Lemon does? He's one of those receivers, gives you a lot of those. A, gives you a lot of easy completions with his separation down near the line of scrimmage. And B, again, you want to talk about playing bigger than he is. My goodness. I mean, you see some of the contested catches. I think the two games that really stand out when you talk about this, USC, they lost to Illinois, but man, Lemon took that game over. And then I think his third quarter against Iowa, I believe it was the third quarter, it was probably the best quarter I saw any receiver play in college football last season. Just unbelievable against such a tough, sound team in coverage and contested catches, route running, making clutch plays when he had to, down in the end zone. I mean, just everything you could ask for Mekhi Lemon to do. I mean, to me, the one knock is just, okay, he's a little smaller than average. Yeah, that is true. And there's another former USC receiver who just plays bigger than his size, and it works in the NFL. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't know that Lemon will be that good. It's hard to predict about a guy being a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but I think he'd be a great fit there in with Garrett Wilson and with A.D. Mitchell and what the Jets are trying to build there on offense.
Fantastic. I'm catching back up on the simulator here. Apologies. I think I actually messed it up and put the Eagles instead of the Browns. I think I've got this right. We got Sadiq at 14, was going to the Ravens.
Yep.
You had Monroe Freeling going to 15 to trade down from the Tampa Bay Bucs. And then at 16, you took Mekhi Lemon there. Makes sense, right? I mean, they just got to have offensive firepower right there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that puts me back in another tough spot here. The Lions wanted Freeling. Obviously, the Browns jumped him. They got a vacant gap at left tackle now that Taylor Decker has just left the team. I think that I've got it. Oh, go ahead.
There's a glaring name to me, because one thing to keep in mind here is, and Dan Campbell's even said this, we can, and they might even prefer to move Penei Sewell to the left side. So there's some right tackle options there on the board, and certainly one is that second name on your board there that sticks out to me that I think would fit right in perfectly.
Spencer Fano would be amazing, right? If you want to move Penei back. And did Penei play as a left tackle in college a little bit?
Yes.
Was I wrong that he switched back and forth? So, I mean, and it seemed like they were even open to the idea of that when they were addressed about it. You've got one of the strongest right tackles in the league that could probably do all right for itself at left tackle. I know that Spencer Fano is a zone blocking scheme offensive lineman. He's a guy that can be mobile. You got Jahmyr Gibbs that's going to want to open up the lanes. You don't want somebody that's just massive, I think, like a Caden Proctor, who would be a people mover, but might not be able to move out in space like the Lions want to do. I feel like Fano did that with Utah. I agree with you that he would be the better pick. I don't actually think Fano is likely going to be available on draft day. I'm surprised to see him still available. I was originally thinking Caden Proctor would be the pick for the Lions, but I agree with you. If Fano's there, you got a mobile zone blocking offensive lineman, and you need help on the left side. Seems like he's a natural fit there for the Lions at number 17. Keep rolling, man. Tell me more about Fano. You think this is going to be the pick that they're going to get?
I think it's a perfect fit. I really do. I think there is a chance that Fano could drop to 17. I think you're going to get some GMs possibly with the relatively average to slightly below average length that he has that go, well, maybe we see him as an interior player, but I think he can play tackle. He's athletic enough. I think he can overcome it. He's another guy we saw overcome it with his athleticism. He's got to get a little bit stronger. If he could put 8 to 10 more pounds on just of muscle, I think he'd be an outstanding player. And I think if you have Fano and Sewell as your tackle duo, that's the most athletic tackle duo in the league. You talking about getting out in space and let Jahmyr Gibbs run out on the edge? Man, oh man, that's going to just be as fun to watch as we've ever seen in Detroit. So I think Fano, I think he could get there, and I think he's a perfect fit moving Sewell over to the left side and putting him on the right side.
Dan Campbell is rejoicing. He is ecstatic about this pick. He's blaring his Metallica like he loves to do. Very excited to bring in Fano, number 17, the Lions. Put you back, Dalton. You're back to the Vikings now. This is going to be an interesting pick. I want to see what you do with this one, number 18.
Man, you talk about Blair and Metallica. It sounds just like me, too. I'm telling you, all day, just sit there with the tape and the Metallica on in the background. That's all we do around here. But
I'm going to the Sphere next year. I'm going to see him in February in Vegas. I'm very excited.
Don't sit here and make me jealous like that, man. Don't do. I saw. What did I see? Was it last year or the year before that I saw him at Soldier? Yeah, it's the year before I saw them at Soldier Field in Chicago. I mean, it's just it's great. That I'm jealous of, man. I got to make a trip to Vegas.
We'll see Dan there the next concert. Dan Campbell. Okay.
Man, I hate to make the obvious pick for our Vikings fans here, but I love Dylan Thieneman so much. And if you're going to lose a Harrison Smith and you're going to bring in a guy to replace him, it's just hard for me not to pick Dylan Thieneman, right? I mean, I like where they're at safety with Josh Metellus and Theo Jackson. I think those are good players, but Thieneman is so athletic. He can play in the single high when Brian Flores wants to get aggressive and go to man coverage. He can play down in the box. He can play in the slot. You can move. Just Dylan Thieneman in that defense would keep it as flexible as it ever was. And look, as a true freshman at Purdue, best single high safety in the country, even better than Caleb Downs. He was the best single high safety in the country, and he was asked to do it more than anybody else in the country as a true freshman, and he was unbelievable. And then the last couple of years, the role got, a little more diversified, and especially in Dan Lanning's defense, he was the glue that held the whole thing together amongst a really young secondary, especially out there at corner. I love this guy. I think it's a great fit. I would have zero issue with Minnesota if assuming Harrison Smith is retiring, that Dylan Thieneman is his replacement. I think it's a very natural fit.
And Brian Flores wants to blitz all the time, right? The Vikings blitz, 50% of the defensive snaps out there. I mean, this is a really fast-moving defense, especially in the secondary. You got to have a free-range, player like a Thieneman back there to adapt really quickly, pick up the reads, jam up the receivers. It seems like the natural fit for them, absolutely. Brings me to the Panthers, my rival. I'm not going to purposely give them a bad player because I'm a Saints fan, but I am a little confused on what to do with this pick because a lot of players that were kind of coming off the board that I think I wanted. If I'm the Panthers, and I know the ethos of what the Panthers like to do, they want to put a big, powerful guy on the defensive line right there. It's just Panthers football. You got a power defensive lineman, maybe a strong edge rusher. There's a couple that are jumping off the page on me here. And it's going to be a tough one, but I think ultimately I'm going to go with Mesidor. I think that this is a right fit for him. We knew that they brought in some edge talent in the offseason, but I still feel like you line him up there with an already defensive, intimidating, and imposing defensive line that they've got. I think Mesidor is going to fit in pretty well out there right now. It might be a crowded class. I believe they're running a 3-4, so he would be a 3-4 end instead of more of a 4-3 or an outside linebacker. That's okay for him because he's a larger edge rusher anyway. I believe 280 pounds or something around that level. Peter Woods is a potential for me. I think we're a little bit less impressed with what we thought he was going to be this last year. And so I think he's going to drop down a little bit farther from this 19th pick. But if I see Mesidor right there and the Panthers, already getting in the playoffs, wanting to win the division again this year and having a good chance to do it, you got to bring the heat. Mesidor's a little older player, but he's also pro ready. I put him on the line knowing that the Panthers like to play defensive linemen that are very powerful with the early picks.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most fascinating picks in the first round to me is Carolina's, and I've even talked to some people on the Panthers beat in the last few weeks that go, there's so many different directions they could go. Do you plan for the future at tackle if you like someone there? Do you go do they believe enough in a CJ Allen or maybe somebody like a Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker? Is it the D line? Is it off the edge with more talent? Is it in the D tackle spot? I think Cade McDonald would make them a lot better, right? I think, is it a weapon? Is it a Kenyon Sadiq if he were on the board? Is it a wide receiver? Could it be an Omar Cooper? Like Carolina just feels like, Dan Morgan, I don't know if he's licking his chops or if he's worried. He's probably licking his chops right now going, hey, I can improve my football team in 4 or 5 different ways. Very curious to see how they would do it. But I think Mesidor, it's a good call out that he can play inside a little bit too, and you can really mess around with the fronts because, again, very well-taught edge rusher, a lot of experience inside at defensive tackle or even over the tackle is that 5 technique. So, you just to bring in more beef on that defensive line makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of defensive line talent in this class. So if he wanted to do it first round, he could. If he wanted to wait, he could. I mean, it's just a great draft to build in the trenches on that side of the ball. But I think it makes sense. I think there's a lot of different ways. We have to remember, Carolina won their division. They were still only 8-9, so they should not settle anywhere on their team. Any way that they can get better, I think, is something that would be satisfactory to them and their fans.
Derek Brown had a really good season last year. He bounced right back from his injury, had a really good, you pair him with the Mesidor right up there on the line, and then you got your outside linebackers, just brought in Jalen Phillips. I mean, I feel like and then the Panthers drafted, who was it? Two outside linebackers last year too, right? They are pushing that front 7. You want to have some defensive heat in that NFC South. I just feel like it's a right pick for them. I don't know how Mesidor is going to play out. I feel like he is pro ready, and there's always the age concern for it, but it feels like he's going to jump right in and be a contributor for a team that wants to be a playoff team next year. That brings me back to you're back on the clock again. The Cowboys, you got the second pick for them too, number 20 here, Dalton.
Yeah, this is fun because the Cowboys, I heavy thoughts about Emmanuel McNeil-Warren here. We could continue going in the secondary. CJ Allen, I know he's the top guy there on the board, but I don't know that I'm 100% convinced he's a first-round pick. I have my doubt. I think he might be more of a second-rounder for me. I do worry a little bit about the relatively average speed and range that he has. Great at what he does. I mean, an unreal run defender who you can plug in, and he's going to be able, within the box and within what he can do, bring you a stable force in the run game. So It's tough because I also look at D tackle with this team. I love Quinnen Williams. I love Kenny Clark, but it feels like they're trying to get bigger. So maybe it's CJ Allen and they believe in him enough to do it here. I was making that pick a lot earlier in the offseason. I'm gonna go with my guy. I'm gonna go with the big defensive tackle from Ohio State, Caden McDonald. I think you want to talk about a guy who, Christian Parker coming from Philly, working under Vic Fangio, and just that massive group of defensive tackles that he had, right? You talk about, can a Caden McDonald, not quite as athletic because Jordan Davis was an athletic freak, but can Caden McDonald play that same role where you just know you stick him on either side of the center and the A-gaps are absolutely locked down? Something I've talked about a lot. Look, you watch that Ohio State defense. Yeah, Sonny Styles is great. He's fun. Caleb Downs is great. Arvell Reese is great. Who's the guy that clears all that space for them in the middle of that defense? It's Caden McDonald, taking on double teams, penetrating into the backfield. Look, is he going to give you a ton as a pass rusher? No, but they got Quinnen Williams for that. They got some guys off the edge for that. I'm not too worried about that. I need this team to be better between the tackles one way or the other. So it's between Allen and McDonald. I'm going to go with Caden McDonald. I love that guy, man. He's one of those guys who makes your entire front seven better.
I'm terrified of the Cowboys. I don't want to play against the Cowboys. If you're putting Caden McDonald and Quinnen Williams, and they got Rashawn Gary, and you got Kenny Clark, and then you got the guys on the outside rushing. This is a formidable front seven now that Jerry's put together, knowing that he had a lot of problems with that last year. Applause for him doing what he needed to do in the offseason. That would be amazing if they also got him in the draft. Great pick. Pittsburgh Steelers, number 20. Man, this is one I don't like either. This is just one, there's going to be whispers of Ty Simpson at this pick. There always have been, when is the QB2 going to go off the board? I like Ty Simpson. I'm rooting for him. I think he's going to be a great player. The Steelers, outside of Aaron Rodgers, don't really have a quarterback right now. But it also feels like you've got too early to take this player, and you've got to consider what is the best move for this franchise. What do they want to do? What do they typically do? Again, this is a predictive mock, not what I would do. I don't think the Steelers are going to go with Ty Simpson here. I think that they've already learned their lesson in years past with Kenny Pickett of a mid-round, first-round pick of the quarterback that doesn't work out for them. I think they're going to milk Aaron Rodgers for as much as they possibly can get out of him. We've heard them say that they're going to expect a decision before the draft, which to me sounds like if Aaron Rodgers says, I'm done, I'm retiring, I'm going to South America and going to drink my psychedelic tea, that's great. You can draft a quarterback and you do what you got to do. But it sounds like with that kind of language and commentary, they want Aaron to be the starter again. Knowing they got him in the playoffs last year, I think he will be the starter at quarterback, and they don't have to draft a quarterback here if Aaron comes back. So I'm going to pass on Ty Simpson on this. I think that I'm going to go with Proctor. I think I'm going to go with left tackle out of Alabama on this one. Broderick Jones, starting left tackle right there, just not what they expected him to be. I think he's still on his, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Dalton, but I think he's still on his rookie deal for one more year. They've got him under contract, so they could play him. They could, switch things up on the offensive line if they wanted to. But the Steelers, they like to draft strong, powerful offensive linemen early in the draft. I think Proctor has got probably some of the most upside of any of the players just because of the sheer strength that he has. I watched him at the combine. That guy was moving the pads and just he's got really good footwork for being 370 pounds. He's got a ton of upside. Of course, the Alabama system that it is what it is out there. I wouldn't be surprised if he outperforms a lot of people's expectations and silences a lot of the naysayers right now. And I think knowing the Steelers, and again, being a predictive mock here, I think they want to draft a lineman like they've done in previous years. I'll put Proctor going to the Steelers there at number 21.
And if the Steelers were to take him, and they I don't know what their left guard situation really looks like right now. That's a very muddy situation too. They could decide, you know what? All right, we got Jones for one more year. We can put Proctor inside at guard. As big as he is, he can still be that big interior presence too. So they've got options, and him weighing in at just over 350 was encouraging. If he can keep his weight down, he can stay at tackle, and I think he can be really good. If he's still going to play at 360 plus, then I think you might have to move him inside. You can see where that's a little bit of a factor where his footwork because those guys are so much lighter than he is. So I do think it makes sense. I think a left tackle option makes sense. And I think another guy that could make sense is if you wanted to go receiver, maybe with an Omar Cooper. I think he would bring a different dimension than what they have with DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman. But no, I think it's a solid pick to shore up that left side of that offensive line. I think it's a big story in Cleveland, and they've got to get better on that side.
Absolutely. Back to you, my friend. 22 on the
Pittsburgh,
clock.
I should say, not Cleveland. Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. So we're back at the clock. Chargers now at 22. Coming back to you, Dalton. Dalton, did I lose you here for a second?
This is a hard one too.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry.
Need some help.
Cut out for me there. Go ahead, Dalton. I can hear you.
I don't think you got me there.
I got you.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Cut out for 2 seconds. I hear
this
you.
This is a tougher one. They need help at receiver. They need help interior offensive line. A guy, oh man, I'm so tempted. A guy that I really like, I think more than a lot of people, is Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon, the left guard out of Oregon. I've been taking Mesidor with this pick when he gets here. I don't know what their receiver situation, if they want to really upgrade it in the draft, because I know they were kind of sort of in on A.J. Brown. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take a little bit of a swing here and go Emmanuel Pregnon. I think he's a plug and play starting guard. I think he's the second best guard in this draft beyond Ioane at the top from Penn State. And just a solid player. He led all of college football guards in wins above replacement, wins above average, I should say, this past year. Just a solidly athletic player, a solidly strong player who could get a little bit stronger. And I think just somebody who Mike McDaniel could really like putting in that new offense. And to me right now, guard is the biggest problem. Center, I like the addition of Tyler Biadasz, but they can't walk into the season with Trevor Penning and Cole Strange at guard. So maybe it's a slight reach based on need. Maybe we could trade down here, but I'm going to go ahead and swing. I think Emmanuel Pregnon's a guy that I don't see go late in the first round a ton, but I think he should be under consideration for several teams, especially when I look at the Chargers here and Houston there with that 28th pick. I've been taking him there a lot too.
Dalton, I can't tell you enough how much I love this pick, man. It's such a stretch. It's anti-consensus. He's farther down the board than anyone else is seeing. No one else is seeing this except you, man. But it makes complete sense. I mean, Oregon, the alma mater with Justin Herbert, and then all of a sudden you got somebody who translates from the same system to protect him in the pros too. Only makes sense for a team that needs offensive line talent, right? Zion Johnson and Mekhi Becton just didn't get it done last year. And then on top of that, your tackles were. You have to address the offensive line, especially the interior of that. I don't think he gave up a sack. Did he give up a single sack at Oregon? Maybe one sack in 3 years.
I'd have to check that. I don't remember if he gave up a sack, but he was so good. I mean, he was one of the highest. I think he might have been the highest graded guard in the Power Four for us. So, I mean, just all the way around, he was spectacular. I'd have to check that exact. Maybe he gave up one sack, but I mean, he was just outstanding. One of the most consistent players in all of college football last year.
Love the pick. Love it. Herbert loves the pick too. That's going to be a good one. Okay, so that was 22. Emmanuel Pregnon coming from Oregon back to join his alma mater, former colleague at Oregon. Let's see. That puts me. I got to scroll down a little bit, I think, on this one to find it. There he is down there.
Well, yeah, 23 okay. Here. You got to force it back to Philadelphia. I think it was. We got to go.
Oh goodness, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we got to go Philadelphia and then Tampa with the next one after that. So
okay.
Force through whatever trade it for.
Okay, so we're on the clock now. I think the Eagles at 23, right? This is the one.
Yep.
So we're going to go ahead and fudge this. Don't pay attention to what the numbers say, but at least you get the things correct. Eagles 23, and then 24 was back to Tampa Bay, I think, for that pick, if I'm not correct. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there.
Okay, good deal. Okay, so 23 on the clock. Back to the Eagles. Oh gosh, my top player is still on the board. I've got to do it.
Yep, I'm in.
Where is he? Nope. Hold on a second.
Wait.
Now.
Oh, is it a different thing I was looking for? You're going different than me.
Anti-consensus on this one. This is, again, not consensus of what it is. What the draft board might say is very different than what I think I'm going to do on this one. I think that in terms of the player that, if I'm the Eagles that I want to take, I'm going after Caleb Lomu on this one. Just the versatility of that offensive line makes perfect sense. We know that Philadelphia loves to draft in the trenches early on. Lomu is one of these zone blocking offensive tackles. The Eagles and Saquon, they love to open up the lanes. Love to have that kind of scheme. Fluid, great feet, add depth. Needs to put a little bit of power. At least in the scouting reports that I've seen for him. But I think with the Eagles and what they want to do and how they tend to draft, not only is predictive. Maybe he's not as high on the big board as like a Blake Miller or somebody else like that. But I think Roseman's going to love this player. I think he's the right fit for that offensive line. I'm going with Lomu for the Eagles at 23. Dalton, I want to hear what you were going for. That's not the player you were looking at for this one.
I thought you were going to go defensive side and go with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren to fill at safety. Sidney Brown is gone. Reed Blankenship is gone. They've got Andrew Makuba coming off injury. I thought maybe Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I think if there was a spot for Keldrick Faulk to go in the first round, I think this would be the most logical spot. I don't think they'll do it, but I've always been a fan of maybe the Eagles finally get a third weapon at receiver like an Omar Cooper. But they love to invest on the offensive line. Lane Johnson's getting older. He's had his injuries. I think any of those first three offensive tackles that you had on the board there when you talk about Lomu or Blake Miller or Max Ionicher. I'll be honest with you, Ionicher might have the highest ceiling of the three of them, and I'd be a big fan of him sitting behind Elaine Johnson for a year just to learn and then take over that right tackle spot because he just hasn't been playing football for very long. But it makes sense. I mean, the Eagles, they don't necessarily go with, oh, what's our biggest need? That's what we're going to draft. They really, Howie Roseman does a great job of just drafting the best football players and going, okay, the draft is a long-term. We got to look long-term here, right? And we got to make our football team better for the next 5 to 8 years as opposed to just next year. So I could see it. I think if I was going with a win now, fix it right now move, I might go with McNeil Warren. But anytime you invest on the offensive line with talented players, it's really hard to argue against it with the way the league is now.
And the depth, right? A lot of those players later in their contracts, getting a little bit older. We saw some offensive line depth issues for the Eagles last year. I want a player that's going to be versatile, that I can move into maybe 2 or 3 different positions. That's why I went with Lomu on that one. Agree with everything you said. I feel like they need some more receiving talent too. Kenyon Sadiq, if he's still available for the Eagles, I feel like they would love to pick him up there right now. But 23, based on how the board played out for us, I think I'm going to go with Lomu. I'm going to lock that one and feel pretty good about it.
I get it totally.
Yep. Okay. So coming back to 14 now, 24 now. This is, I believe, we're coming back to the Bucs at this point, right? Make sure I've got myself honest here. And again, pay no mind to the trades themselves. We are just keeping ourselves honest. We're back on the clock. This is 24. This is coming to you now. Tampa Bay. You inherited this selection, Dalton. Thank goodness, because I didn't want to make this pick. I don't know what the Bucs want to do with this first round this year.
I know. I don't want to make the wrong pick and have Trevor Sycamore be mad at me with his Tampa Bay Bucs, man.
That's
right. Boy.
Right.
I think – all right, I'm going to do it. I think if C.J. Allen was going to be a first-round pick, you start talking about it in this range to a team that desperately needs linebackers. The teams that I look at in this range, especially, are Tampa Bay and Buffalo. I'm probably going to end up taking him with one of these next 2 picks. I'm gonna actually just take him right here for Tampa. They got Alex Anzalone in there. They still have Servassier Dennis, who really struggled last year. This is a team at linebacker that really needed just a complete overhaul. We got the Levante David retirement announcement recently, so I think you talk about them needing to just get better in the middle of their defense. I think C.J. Allen does that. He brings you a very consistent force in run defense. He's a good blitzer. Is there work to be done in coverage? Absolutely. I don't know that he's the most fluid athlete. He's not as fluid as a Sonny Styles or an Arvell Reese. I think there might be a little more limited range for him, but I think he can be a solid, consistent player for a long time who, he can be the middle linebacker of your defense for 10 years. I believe that. You're just going to have to take what you can get with it, right? I think the style is a little more in that of, say, a Nick Bolton for Kansas City, but look how much value the Chiefs have gotten out of a Nick Bolton. I'll go with C.J. Allen here. The Bucs have 2 major problems on defense, one-on-one edge rushers and linebacker, both of them deep classes. I'll trust the depth of the edge class even more here and go with Allen to Tampa.
Bowles is going to love this guy. Obviously, he's going to be a good fit for his defense. I do want to ask you, Dalton, this is kind of based on how the board fell. Who is the ideal pick for the Buccaneers there? If they trade down or if they're kind of in the middle of the round, if you could have the ideal situation based on the realistic outcomes that are available, who do the Bucs want to draft in the first round this year?
At 15 or in a trade down?
Let's say at 15. We did the trade down. We did some other things, but if they're at 15 and the board falls the perfect way for them, ideally, who do you think they're going after?
I think perfectly. I think for me, because I have him. Do I have him edge 3? I think I do, because I counted Reese as a linebacker. If they traded down to a spot like 24 and Akeem Mesidor got that far, I think that'd be an extremely good outcome. I could give some thought to, say, a Cassius Howell who's there on the board, a TJ Parker also. Howell, I worry more about the length than I do with Ruben Bain, so I don't know that he's going to be a first-round pick. And TJ Parker, if you're looking for just solid, in the same way kind of I talked about Allen, I think this guy's going to be a long-time solid starter. TJ Parker is kind of the edge version of that, so I think the ideal pick is if they got Mesidor, despite the age and all that, and what Todd Bowles is going to try to accomplish, because I think there's a spot here where Todd Bowles I think he's going to go into the season on the hot seat. I think they're going to be expected to go in and find a way, even without Mike Evans and Levante David and those guys. I think it's going to be an expectation to try to make the postseason and win this division. But I think Mesidor would be number 1 for me. And then beyond that, I think you are picking from C.J. Allen, T.J. Parker. Maybe they like Jacob Rodriguez enough to do it in the first round. I'm not sure on that one, but I could see the case. I would love him in the second round of them as well. But edge and linebacker, you're looking for as good a players as possible in Tampa there. And I just think that 15 it's really to me, it's the way most mocks that I've done have shaken out for them. It's kind of unfortunate that they're picking 15 and not say 10 or 11 or even later, because you're right. The trade down there, I think, was the best scenario. But this is solid too, to get CJ Allen and then dig in maybe in round 2 to a deep edge class. I wouldn't have a ton of issue with that.
I am intrigued too with the Cassius Howell fit with the Bucs. I feel like he is a player that fits the scheme that probably isn't going to work out that well in the pros. Just like you said, he doesn't have the length. He's not a big, people mover. He's going to get muscled around out there. But I feel like the scheme with Bulls, he would fit really well. But it's too soon to draft him at 15, and probably too soon in the middle of the first or the bottom of the first to draft that time.
I'll tell you though, if you had a scenario like this and the Bucs were to get CJ Allen, say here at 24, and I believe they're picking 45. If Cassius Howell got to 45,
do it.
I'm in on that, because that's a gamble you can take as a guy who can rotate the pass rush. The arsenal. I'll be honest, I had more fun watching Cassius Howell than any other edge defender. He's so much fun to watch, and he battles. He's better in run defense than people give him credit for. You don't want him taking on double teams or anything like that, but he battles, and he's not. Yeah. He's not like useless out there in run defense, even though he is that small. It's a guy who's just a good football player. If they got Allen and Howell 1-2, I think that'd be an A+ first couple of rounds for Tampa. I think that would work.
100% agree. But if you take Howell at 15 and he doesn't work out in the pros, then Bulls gets fired. That's just too early to take him and take the risk on him. I think the same thing. I'm back on the clock. I'm at 25 now on the Bears. I think this is probably a no-brainer for me. I've got to figure out where he is down on the board here. I'm taking Peter Woods out of Clemson. I wanted to take Caden McDonald, who would be the natural fit for this. You grabbed him from me there, so I've got to improvise and do what I've got here. But the Bears gave up 5 yards a carry to their opponents last year. You've got to have a better defensive line presence. I think this is the natural fit. Caleb Banks is so intriguing, man. I want to take that player, but I'm so nervous about that foot injury that he had in the combine. He's just a big guy. I think he's going to re-aggravate that injury a lot more times. I don't think he's a first-round pick anymore. I think I'm going to play it safe here and go with Peter Woods instead. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one too, Dalton. Yeah.
I think the 3 thoughts for me here would be either of the 2 Clemson defensive linemen, Woods or TJ Parker. Really love them both. And Peter Woods, I think when you talk about the best pure 3 technique in this class, a guy who can make an impact with this athleticism in the run game. And I think there's untapped pass rush potential in there. Clemson, so many teams played them with those guys on the D-line, and they just got rid of the football so quickly. Like, they just got rid of the ball before they could really make an impact. So only 14 pressures for Peter Woods this past year, but I think a lot of that was part of game planning, right? And even if he's never an elite pass rusher, what he can do for you in the run game as well. The Bears they need more talent on the defensive line. So Woods or Parker would have made sense, or another team there where Emmanuel McNeil-Warren would have been a consideration. They do have a hole at safety right now.
Absolutely. You're back at number 26 with the Bills.
I am going to go. I know so many people go receiver here. And to be honest with you, this, the way the board falls so often for me, I would not be shocked at all if the Bills trade down either. They don't have a second round pick. They got DJ Moore. They don't have another pick until it's like 92 or somewhere in that range. I forget, but it's a long way before they have another pick. With as much defensive depth as in this class and as much defensive help as they still need, my honest preference here would be to trade out of the first round, let somebody come get Ty Simpson or what have you. We're not going to do it. I'll take a player here for the sake of not getting, and then we still get our Bills fans who are watching. We get him a pick. So give me the top guy on the board right there. Give me Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I think when you look at where the Bills are at and what Jim Leonard's going to want to do with this defense, he loves building his defenses from the back end forward. He's a safety. He was great safety for the Baltimore Ravens, New York Jets under Rex Ryan back in the day. Unbelievable play caller. I'm telling you, he didn't call plays in Denver the last couple of years as their DBs coach. When he was a DC at Wisconsin, boy, it was fun to watch his defenses. It was so much fun to just see all the exotic looks. And I think to fill in with one more true starting safety next to Cole Bishop and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, you've got C.J. Gardner-Johnson there for depth. They got D. Alford in the slot to replace Taron Johnson. I think Jim Leonard's really going to want to shore up this coverage unit. They can dig into a deep linebacker class later in the draft, even if it isn't all the way to that third round. There's players that they could use there. So I'm going to go McNeil-Warren here. If they stick, just throwing it out there that my preference would be for the Bills to trade out of the first round if they could.
I think the natural team to trade up right there is going to be the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to see Blake Miller still on the board. You got a right tackle that could be a starter on day one. And you just, it's not a super move they'd have to make. They're already at 34. I mean, you throw in a little kicker for that. And I agree with you. The Buffalo wants to pick up a couple more draft picks. I agree with you. It's an ideal trade down scenario, but let's take EMW. Put him in the secondary. Perfect. My goodness, the 49ers. I don't like this pick. I don't like this already, Dalton. I don't like it. This is a tough one. You've got everybody and their dog and their grandma on the 49ers is injured. And you've got a bunch of voids to fill, and you've got to have somebody catching the ball. We know the 49ers don't like to draft offensive linemen early in the draft. They like to trade for them later on. Even Trent Williams. I mean, like even their great offensive linemen, they don't pick them right up from the draft. They want to go pick them up later. I think they do like to draft offensive playmakers that can be gadget players that Shanahan can move around in different roles. And you've got just this massive void right now between the Ayuk situation and all the other receivers, Jennings, and everybody else on the 49ers kind of causing this void. I think I've got to go with the receiver here. And now my question is, which receiver do I want to put into the 49ers? I've got Denzel Boston, I've got Omar Cooper, and I've got Casey Concepcion as potentials for this. I'm going to go ahead and make a pick, but then I want to ask which of those three you would prefer for the 49ers, but not so that you won't influence me. I'm going to go with Concepcion just because I'm a Texas guy, maybe, and I like to see what he's done with the Aggies all year. He seems like one of those gadget receivers. You're going to put him in the slot. He can do a bunch of different formations. Purdy's going to love him. He can spread the field. He can even return punts, contribute in special teams if you want to. I just feel like with Shanahan, with the versatility this offense has, they did bring in, of course, Mike Evans. They brought in Christian Kirk. You've got some other receiving talent out there, but I think it's good to have a younger presence that's going to learn from a lot of those receivers. I say KCC to the 49ers there at 27. Really interested to hear your insights on this one, though, Dalton.
You see, Simon, you just read my mind. So my first answer was going to be just not Denzel Boston. Pick one of the other two because Boston to me is too similar, say, to Mike Evans, right? Not that he couldn't be good in the future, and I think Denzel Boston's a really good player, but I think for what the Niners need, they need that ball in their hands threat. They need that after the catch threat. They need that dynamic, movable chess piece, like you just mentioned.
The next Debo, right? Yeah,
yeah. And I'll tell you, and Cooper could fill that role too. Either one of them, I'd be cool with. I was on with the on 49ers.com actually the other day with a couple of their terrific reporters, and they asked me who's the one player that Shanahan you think, and I said, I think it's Casey Concepcion. I just think the after the catch ability, the ability even to work out of the backfield, the ability, he's one of the best punt returners in the country in this draft, right? I just think that type of player, him or Cooper, would make a ton of sense. They need to add some after the catch to their offense. It's something that's lagged the last 2 years. Mike Evans is going to bring you a lot. He's not going to bring you that. Ricky Pearsall doesn't really bring you that. I'm such a huge fan of when you're bringing in weapons, like we talked about Sadiq before, when you're bringing in a Concepcion to this team, diversifying that portfolio, right? When you talk about, I got different types of players and not just like 4 players that are in here, super redundant. Like if I bring in Denzel Boston, he's redundant to Mike Evans. Same thing. I wouldn't draft Denzel Boston if I was Pittsburgh. To me, that's redundant to even Metcalf and Pittman and kind of what they have going on there. I would take a Cooper, a Concepcion in Pittsburgh as well. So I think KC, between him and Cooper, you could flip a coin and convince me of either, but that type of player, that's exactly what they need to fill out this offense.
Love it. And just Debo excelled in that system, that yards after catch, like you said, it feels like the same mold that will work well with the 49ers there. My hometown Houston Texans, even though I'm a diehard Saints fan, I'm here in Houston. I'm real interested to see who you're going to pick here at number 28 for them.
I think so. O-line and D-line is the focus for me here, right in the interior. If I was smart enough to leave Emmanuel Pregnon on the board here, I would take Pregnon. I'm going to go with a guy that I really like. I think's got sneaky first-round potential. Give me Kristen Miller, the D tackle out of Georgia. I think this is a safe, what you're getting player, more than just a nose tackle. The more I was watching his tape, especially in run defense, I think he's a guy who can move all around the defensive line for you. Now, the Texans don't usually mix up their alignments too much. They're kind of a team that sticks with that 4-man front. Maybe they just make him the nose. But when you talk about now an interior, because off the edges, you can't get out there in the run game, especially with Daniil Hunter, with Will Anderson. You have to beat this team between the tackles right now. But if they add a Kristen Miller, you throw him in that rotation with Tommy Togiai, with Sheldon Rankins, I think all of a sudden it gets locked down there in the middle too. So I think either way, interior on either side of the line of scrimmage is going to work for them. I like Kristen Miller. He's not going to put up the flashiest stats. He might not put up 10 to 12 sacks at any point in his career, but I'm telling you right now, major impact in the run game and maybe even a little more left to go untapped in the pass game.
I love it, man. This is an elite defense, a Super Bowl winning defense. It's got things they got to figure out on offense. Play to your strength. Like you said, adjust the hole right in the middle of the tackles and make sure you're not getting run over. Great pick there. Kristen Miller going to the Texans. This brings me back to the Chiefs again. A reminder, with the first pick for the Chiefs, I went at number 9 with Maui Noah. I went with the offensive tackle. I've got to go defense on this one. I think that this is just. Go ahead.
I'll
Yeah,
tell
go
you,
ahead.
even on the offensive side, you got options here. Because I know you're going like Avion Terrell would appeal to me. I don't know if that was where you were going. But if you wanted to convince yourself to go offense again, Omar Cooper, I think you could go either side of the ball. This is a fun pick the way this board fell.
This is why I'm going to play the predictive on this one, Dalton. I'm not going to do what I would do because you just said the player that I would pick, but I'm not going to pick that one. I'm going to pick the one that I think Spagnuolo wants. I think that, the defensive coordinator, knowing that they like powerful edge rushers are going to line up there and bring the defense in front of that 4-3. I don't think you're getting past Keldrick Falk, who is huge. What, 6'5", 6'6", 280. Like, I don't know how good he's going to do in his first year. I think there's a lot of reservations I have. I think he's a better run defender than a pass rusher. I just don't think that, he showed enough to convince me that he's going to get more than 4 or maybe 5 on the high side sacks in that first year. But I think that the defense and the system that he's going into in that scheme, that 4-3, the powerful defensive lineman that the Chiefs want right there next to Chris Jones, I don't think they're going to let him fall farther than 29 out there. And Falk's got the tools. He's a cultural, player, great teammate, 20 years old, still very young. They can mold him. And I think they're going to love this player being available. I think Terrell would be the pick that I would make to replace McDuffie immediately, a short-arm cornerback that's got the fire. But I think that Falk is more likely what the Chiefs are going to want to do there at number 29. That's what I'm going to go with for them.
I get it. I mean, you're taking it on potential. Now, do I think I could reason with him going late in the first round? Sure. I think some of the original talk of him going, top 15, I personally wouldn't take that gamble, but we see a toolsy guy in the defensive line. There were 2 of them last year to me, and Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart, who weren't polished as pass rushers. And Falk maybe even less polished than those guys. Absolutely right. Great run defender, great frame, great size, and he can play inside for you a little bit too. What he does well, he does very well. I will give him that. But for me, the earlier in the draft that you take an edge rusher, you got to get the pass rush. That's where guys make their money. The $40, $45 million guys, why do they make that money? Because they rack up 100 pressures a year, and they rack up 16 sacks a year, and they do what Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons and Will Anderson can do. I've yet to see Keldrick Falk do that. I can tolerate it at 29. I get it. If you really have to have a plan how to coach that out of this guy and just go, how can we teach him to rush the passer? Even if, say, he gets 8 to 10 sacks a year, the run defense is there. It's right there, and he could be at his ceiling. He could be like a Greg Rousseau type of player for you, right? Where Rousseau is arguably the best run defending edge in the league. If you got him to that, outstanding. But it's going to take some development. You're taking a little bit of a gamble there. So I think all those players make sense for the Chiefs there. And if they're just trying to get bigger and better up front with potential for the long term, I get the idea for sure.
Dalton, you've got some wide receivers on the board here too, right? Omar Cooper is still out there. You got Denzel Boston out there, a couple other players too. I don't think that Rashee Rice nor Xavier Worthy is the answer for what Mahomes needs, out there spreading the field. If you were the Chiefs and drafting a receiver at this pick, I'm curious to see which of these you would prefer or prioritize.
I have Boston as wide receiver 4. So just based on my board, I might do that. Especially for Kansas City, who just doesn't have any size in that room. They have no size, right? There's a lot of smaller, undersized, faster guys. I think Cooper would be a bit redundant, although I like him. And I do, it's funny. We might not get Cooper into this first round, and he's been going first round, even top 20 in some drafts, just about every mock that I see, but you never know. Right. For the Chiefs, I'd probably go Boston. Yeah, if I was going receiver here for the Dolphins, boy, I could take my pick. And also, man, I do like me some Avion Terrell. What did you go with the first pick? Was it it was Ioane, wasn't it?
I took Vega. Yep, I took Vega Ioane. Number 11.
Man, this is the fun part about the Dolphins having all 7 of those picks in a row, and we're only doing 2 of them.
Yep.
It's kind of that which position do I trust the depth more? Man, oh man, that's hard. Because this team needs a receiver in the worst way, but they need corner in the worst way too. Man, heads or tails?
I'll go tails.
All right, give me Avion Terrell.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's heads was offense, tails was defense. I'll go Terrell. Again, this is the part where the Dolphins, it almost makes them both the easiest and the hardest team to draft for because they just need everything. Like, I could take Avion Terrell and justify it. I love his footwork. I love the tenacity he plays with. He's consistent. Zone coverage inside, in the slot, outside, out wide. I mean, he can do so much for you, and he's just going to bring a level of attitude and culture that I think Jeff Hafley could really like a lot. There's receiver depth in this class. They need probably multiple of them, right? I mean, they're so barren at receiver anyway that they're going to attack that on day 2. So again, the Dolphins, I really think, can approach it with just, what does our board look like? Let's take good football players. We know where we're at. We are starting a rebuild right now.
Love it. Okay, number 30, we're going with Avion Terrell. Man, that guy plays with fire, right? He's one of those junkyard dog kind of guys. He's going to knock the ball out, force the fumbles, defense the passes. Going to bring an edge to that team. That's probably what they need in their cornerback room right now. I'm on the board. 31 with the Patriots. This is another one that they have a good team. I'm obviously made the Super Bowl. You got a lot of weapons. You got a lot you can do with this. I think I want to bring in an edge rusher here. It's going to be between Cassius Howell and TJ Parker. I don't know if I want to play the safer one, which I think is going to be TJ Parker versus the upside with Howell. You're drafting at 29. I don't think you're going to get fired for drafting Howell at that spot, and he doesn't work out. I think he's got a little bit more upside. I think he's faster around the bend, around the edge. He's going to get around those tackles. They're running a 3-4, right? This is a Patriots that want to have kind of a bendy, speedier kind of edge rusher. I think that I'm going to go with Howell on that. They did pick Will Campbell. They don't have an issue with short arm guys in any position out there. I think they're going to get past that. I think they probably got the right system, the right scheme that he's going to fit. TJ Parker, I've heard, had a great, a great end of the season, great Senior Bowl. I mean, a guy that can play multiple schemes. He's a little bit bigger than Howell. I just think it's a better scheme fit. I'm going to go with Howell for number 31 to the Patriots. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one too, though, Dalton.
Yeah, I think either way, I think it makes sense. I have Parker, I think, 2 spots higher on my edge rankings than Howell. The build is there, but I get it, dude. Howell's, he's a terrific pass rusher. He's a very refined pass rusher who knows what he's doing. And you mentioned Will Campbell. It'd be fun to watch some of those practice reps between the two of them. The other thing with Howell that I will say is, being that they have a Harold Landry, who's a good run defender, a Draymond Jones, who's a good veteran run defender, they can afford to rotate and not ask Howell to play every single down. They can really unleash him when they want to. I think early on that's going to be the idea until he can get a little bit stronger. And is the length going to be an issue because he's an outlier at length? Yeah, I'm a little more concerned with it for him than Bane because he doesn't have the natural lower body strength of Bane. But I think Howell rotating in is kind of that third guy off the edge. And the Patriots, look, one of their biggest flaws, maybe their biggest flaw last year, was a lack of ability to get pressure from the edge. Their interior pass rush with Williams and Barmore is outstanding, but they were bottom 5, their edge group, in like every pass rush metric that we have. So when you look at it from that angle, Cassius Howell, when you ask me one sentence about his game, and I'll go, he generates pressure. That's just what he does. He speeds up quarterbacks in that rotational role, playing 500 to 600 snaps instead of 1,000. I think he could do that with New England. I get the pick right there. That would be a good spot for him. If he was going first round, I think that'd be a good spot for him.
Third down presence. Put some heat on the quarterback when it's 3rd and 8 out there. Makes sense. Okay, and then close this out. Don't you got the last pick of the round, man? You got the Super Bowl champs, Seahawks at 32. What are we doing here?
It's just fun. The Seahawks don't have a ton of flaws.
Are you going to trade down? They always like to trade down that into the round pick, right? I guess you could.
Certainly could. I mean, this is another spot. If Emmanuel Pregnon were to fall here, I would take him and make him the starting right guard. I think corner makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of borderline first-round corners. I think Brandon Cisse is really athletic. He's solid. I love D'Angelo Ponce. It's another guy. I know outlier size. He's so small, but supposedly ran a 4.31 yesterday at his pro day with his level of technique. I mean, that's you want junkyard dog. It's D'Angelo Ponce, man. I'm telling you. I still don't know that he would go first round just with the lack of size, but man, he's going to be in consideration. One thing that I've been thinking about is filling out the edge with Boye Mafe gone to Cincinnati. And a player that I've taken a lot here is actually Zion Young out of Missouri. But being that I have TJ Parker 1 spot ahead of Young in my edge rankings, and he's still on the board, I'm going to go TJ Parker from Clemson. He's a rock solid run defender. He's very, very consistent. You get the one thing I love with TJ Parker, you get the same guy week in and week out. This guy never has a horrible game. He might not always have those big takeover Myles Garrett games, but But and you add that into that rotation with DeMarcus Lawrence and then some of the other pass rushers that they have, I think filling out that edge room with especially a really good run defender like Parker or like a Zion Young to me would make a lot of sense. Like this is a team that to me would not take Cassius Howell, even if they have an edge need, because they like those bigger bodied, set the edge type of guys that can really funnel everything back in. Parker is a lot like that. I like him as a solid starter for a long time. Maybe not the highest ceiling of some of these other edge rushers, but I like the high floor factor, and I think he can be a really solid 3-down player for you for a long time.
I love that pick, and I love the edge addressing it. The thing that I wanted to talk a little bit while I've got you here is the Seahawks have reportedly made several calls to the Vegas Raiders trying to get Max Crosby for several seasons now. They keep trying to get him and bring him onto the roster. They keep hanging up the phone and saying no. We saw, at least for a little while there, the Ravens were willing to make the deal and make the pot sweet enough to get the Raiders to loosen up. Do you think there's any chance that the Seahawks are going to get Crosby in a trade this year? Or is that just going to be on the rumor mill and a pipe dream that never actually comes to fruition out there?
I don't think so. I think at this point, with everything we've seen and heard, even from Crosby himself, I think, first of all, I don't think Crosby's going anywhere at this point. And for the price or something close to the price that the Raiders would want, I don't think number 32, even I don't know that Seattle would offer 2 first-round picks. I think John Schneider is going to be more content to just keep building it the way he's been building it the last couple of years. So I don't think he's given up 2 first-round picks. I don't know at this point with the physical concerns that the Raiders are getting 2 first-round picks like they would have out of Baltimore or maybe even the Bears. I don't think Crosby's going anywhere, not just Seattle for that matter.
Love it, love it. Well, there's the first 32 picks that we have in the first round. Dalton Wasserman and myself. We got some good ones in there, Dalton. Was there anything that surprised you in this mock? You do a lot of mock drafts. You do a lot of analysis. Was there anything specific about this one that falls outside of the consensus of what you typically see out there?
I think the first name that sticks out that's not there is Omar Cooper. There's been so much first-round buzz on him, but I could see him. I have him as more of a borderline first, second-round type guy. You could swap out, again, Concepcion with Cooper there. Very curious to see what Jermod McCoy's pro day workout does for his stock. A lot of the rest of these, and we'll probably see more trades, there's a good number of them that have been pretty consistent with what I've been seeing in the range. Because, I mean, again, every team's got 2 or 3 options, if not more than that, with what they could go with. And sometimes you just love a player, right? There's always a couple of surprise picks. So still would not shock me at all to see Omar Cooper in this mix replacing somebody. Caleb Banks, you know what? We talked about it. I'm with you. I would be more cautious on it. But you know what? Some teams draft potential, just like you kind of did with Falk there in Kansas City. Could be Caleb Banks too. So, I think the way the top 10 shakes out within the top 10 is kind of its own separate thing. And then as far as predictability, 11 onward, anybody's guess, man. I think it's going to be a wild ride of a first round of a draft, especially the second half of it that night.
I am really looking forward to seeing where the tackles play out. I think there's kind of a consensus that Maui Noah is going to go first off the board, probably somewhere in the top 10 out there, depending on how it falls. But then where is Fano going to go? Where is Lomu going to go? Where's Proctor going to go? Where's Freeling going to go? Some have him going as early as 6 to the Browns. Others say it's not going to be till the late part of the first round. I'm going to see where the tackles go. That'll be interesting. And then Jordan Tyson. I mean, like such a talent that everyone's going to be like, I don't know about the injury risk, but what a playmaker that could be an immediate impact maker for a team out there. I'm going to be keeping an eye on both of those when it comes draft day here. Dalton, once again, my friend, this was so much fun for me. I have been a fan of following your content for a very, very long time. And so I could not hesitate on the chance to get you here on the live stream and do a mock draft with you. I really enjoyed this, my friend. Thank you for all the content over the years. Literally looking forward to seeing what your next chapter looks like here out there, man. But thank you for all of this. And thanks for being with me here on this live stream this morning as we do the first round mock.
Absolutely, Simon, man. Appreciate you having me on. These exercises are always fun just to go over the million different scenarios that we could see. And this was another new one, right? That, we just add in a trade here and there and add in some different players here and there just to think about and be prepared for all of that. So 3 weeks away from the draft, it's a lot of fun. And you and everybody else, I just appreciate everybody reaching out and supporting not only me, but everybody that I worked with, man. I worked with the best team of people over there at PFF, some of them on camera and so many of them off camera, both on, the data collection side and grading. I've done the grades and stuff myself too, so I know how that entire process works from back to front. So it was obviously a lot of fun there, and it's always a lot of fun to come on and do these exercises. And as far as future content for right now, the college channel is sticking with us with myself and Max Chadwick. Go check it out on YouTube, the Preferred Walk-On College Football Show. I believe tomorrow we are doing our top 10 cornerback rankings, both of us me and Max in this draft. So tune into that. Tune in for all the great college content. When we get out of the draft, then we really start hyping up the 2026 college football season. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But again, Simon, just appreciate you reaching out and having me on, man.
I cannot say enough how much I've enjoyed Dalton's content and his insights, and they are deep, man. Third and fourth and fifth layer deep. This is the guy that's got the insights that you want to pay attention to what he's saying. Follow Dalton and all the great content that he's putting out there. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in this morning. Again, 3 weeks till it's April 23rd, and we're going to be live with the actual NFL draft there in Pittsburgh. Stay tuned to see who your team's going to be picking. Appreciate you tuning in this morning. Have a great week and have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.